Mystery is our theme for the month. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan. I'm Pastor Isabel Call, and I love being the minister here. Our mission is to be a diverse, evolving spiritual community acting for a better world. We have no creed or doctrine. You do not have to believe anything in particular in order to belong to this community. We are a welcoming home to atheists, agnostics, and theists alike. Welcome visitors and newcomers. I don't see anyone here in the sanctuary, but perhaps you're with us on Zoom. And if somebody else comes in, you can point them to our greeter, Shirley Hobrock, with any questions or answer the questions yourself. If you're here in person and have a joy or sorrow you would like to have shared later, please write it down. You can find the Joys and Sorrows papers nearby. And if you're here on Zoom, there will be a time later to put your joy or sorrow in the chat. So last week at the Manhattan Ministerial Association, for our check-in, we shared our favorite Christmas song. And I went first and I shared my new favorite, which we heard Renee and Sam Carpenter share with us last week, Vienna Tang's The Atheist Christmas Carol. And I felt my fellow pastors jump in their skin a little bit when I said the word atheist. But then Pastor Kayla texted me later and said, I'm in love with this song. Thanks for mentioning it, Isabel. Atheists and atheist theology and atheist music are beautiful and appreciated, and they belong here. We're not defined by binaries. Atheist and theist aren't opposite here. We are defined by relationship. We are united in a common purpose to love each other and the world. Today, much of our music and poetry reference God, in particular the divine who resides in darkness. This is not an old white guy with a beard, but a mystery, a force of love that we don't understand. If God is a foreign language for you, a foreign term, I invite you to listen with your heart and the intuitive side of your brain. And what is your translation? Speaking of translations, I recently learned that in the Kanza language, there are no exact translations for the months of the year. Not only do they not have 12, their months don't line up like building blocks. Instead, they overlap like clouds. Right now, we are in the months of Bahuye, when snow comes, and Takuyugabe, when deer mate. Unlike December, which is defined in part by not being November or January, the Kanza months are defined by what is here right now. So let us be here right now in this season of darkness. It's sort of hard to believe with the bright sunshine, but the theme today is darkness. Let us acknowledge that to live in authentic relationship with each other, we must reach understanding that is more true and less precise than any translation. Last week for our Blue Christmas service, we read a children's story about the wave, a menacing darkness, like an ocean wave that shows up when we're just going about our lives and plunges us into sadness. The child who has lived through these waves encourages us that we too can survive. The child counsels us, have a soft heart, look for the shore, keep moving, and you will make it through. In my times of grief and despair, when I have lived with depression, I have needed guidance like this. When the child makes it through, they find a beach with their family, and there is a campfire there to warm them and dry their clothes, and importantly, to give light. While the metaphor of the story shows us a person who keeps moving through darkness, who makes it through to the other side, to the light at the end of the tunnel, it is also showing us that the light is always here, available inside. Keep moving through your feelings, and eventually the dark wave will pass. You'll be able to see and feel your inner light again. Keep moving, and you'll make it through. But also, if we shift the metaphor a little bit, be still and know that the light is here. Even when you've been plunged into darkness, the light is here. We don't know where the light comes from. It is so much a mystery that we make up stories about it, attribute it to an imaginary being who serves as our placeholder for the responsible party for all the things we don't have a clue about. Yes, darkness is real, but have faith. God made light from the darkness, and it was good. And you were made a little bit later from that light, and you are good too. Chill out, honey. Be still and know that light is here. In the winter, when there is less light, we light candles together to prove that the light is here. We remember the light is coming back. We cherish our relationship with the sun. I'm blessed to live in a place with south-facing bay windows, and it shows me a bit of the east and a bit of the west, and only this time of year, if I'm on my game, I can watch the sunrise and the sunset. In the morning, I imagine the sun is watching me wake up, and in the evening, it's telling me good night. The thing about living in close relationship with the sun is that you can't be still and stay in the light. You can't stay put. The sun doesn't just move in an arc every day. The arc moves. And so if I want to sit with my eyes shut and feel the first light of the day, I have to keep moving my chair. And as the sun keeps rising, it moves behind the window frame. And there are moments when I'm in shadow. I can remember that the sun is still there because the rest of the room is glowing, but it's harder later in the day, it's harder in cloudy days, and it's harder at night. And I am less cheery when the sun is covered, and every night when the sun goes down, my mood crashes. I've been wondering this week, what would it be like, a new spiritual practice for myself, if instead of simply waiting for the sun to return in the early morning or in the winter, if I could welcome the darkness and even celebrate it. Maybe I could watch the sunset, not to hungrily soak in the last of the sun's rays, but to say hello to darkness. Celebrate its arrival, understand that the streaks of color across the sky are darkness greeting me. Hello, I'm coming to be with you. I'm coming to hug and nourish you. What if we respected and appreciated darkness not as a means to an end, an intermission we tolerate while waiting for the light, but a sacred or even eternal time, valuable for its own sake. What if our relationship with darkness was so personal, so intimate that we thought about it when the darkness was hidden from us and longed for its return? Reassured ourselves, even in the brightest moments, that darkness was still with us. Be still and know, holy darkness is here. Be still and know, holy darkness is. Be still and know, holy darkness. Honestly, for me, this is an easier prayer than be still and know God is here. If I go deep enough into my imagination, there is darkness. Being still and knowing that I am here, I can imagine underneath my skin and my bones, my heart is beating with relative darkness. My gut is churning without illumination. Be still and know that dark is here, and in that darkness there is life. It's a relief. It's less work than to stretch my imagination and heart toward an abstract God of my own understanding, of my own creation. Darkness is undeniably closer than my own breath. With this prayer, the stretch is to trust it, to trust that it's good. Be still and know darkness is good. Be still and trust the processes of my body, my being, the mystery of my life, sustained in the darkness beneath my skin. Being still and knowing that darkness is good is a necessary prayer and practice. It can be a counter incantation for a culture that has demonized darkness and blackness. Western civilization came out of what became known as the Dark Ages, just as it discovered the power of hating the dark and hating dark-skinned people. It was, of course, the exploitation of the dark continent, Africa, that would finance enlightenment. Even many white people who rejected the enslavement of fellow humans loved their whiteness and wished it upon Black people. They hoped they would become enlightened and brightened. There was even a widespread belief among white and Black people that civilized African skin would turn white. Here are the words of Ibram X. Kendi, whose book we are reading with the Racial Justice Reading Group. For Enlightenment intellectuals, the metaphor of a light typically had a double meaning. Europeans' bright continental beacon of insight existed in the midst of a dark world not yet touched by light. Light then became a metaphor for Europeanness and therefore whiteness, a notion that Benjamin Franklin eagerly embraced and imported to the colonies through his Philosophical Society. White colonists, Franklin alleged in 1751, were, quote, making our side of the globe reflect a brighter light. Let us bar uneconomical slavery and Black people, Franklin suggests. But perhaps he thought, I am partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to mankind. Kendi continues, Enlightenment ideas gave legitimacy to this long-held racist partiality, the connection between lightness and whiteness and reason on one hand, and between darkness and blackness and ignorance on the other. Is partiality natural? Were we made to think in binaries, to cut the world into day and night, white and black, and not stopping there to put ourselves on one side of it? I don't think so. I'm learning that the Kanza people who belonged to this land, they were not primarily binary thinkers. I'm not saying that binaries are bad and non-binaries are good, because that would be hypocritical. But, I mean, yeah, science and art thrive with contrast, with identifying elements of our shared reality and imagining their opposites. The sharpness of ink on paper, the power of magnets, the binary of attraction, repulsion, zeros and ones arranged creatively in computer programs and mysteriously. Binaries leveraged consciously, connecting us across time and space. It's the relationship between darkness and lightness, as we heard earlier with people's examples of darkness. It's that relationship between darkness and lightness that connects us to beauty. So I think I've probably talked to many of you about my cats before. They are the light of my life, I have said. So Mark is going to put up a picture of them. It's a little fuzzy. Velcro is the black cat. It's really hard to get a good picture of a black cat. I don't know if you've experienced this. Even in this one, he fades into the background. He's not who you see first. It's really all about the lighting. So there's a second photo, I think. Yeah. But the light is not what makes Velcro beautiful. The light is what helps me see him and helps you see him. The light helps us perceive his beauty, his inherent beauty. There are other ways to experience Velcro's beauty. The way his fur feels, the sound of his purring, even, and now you'll know how much of a cat person I am, the way he smells. My senses help me perceive beauty. In order to use them, I rely on external conditions, some of which I can control, like light, which I control by turning on a lamp. Of course, sometimes I turn on the lamp to do something else, and then a beautiful creature jumps into the spotlight. Look, beauty now. You're not in control. Here I am. My challenge to you today is to reach deep into your human awareness for beauty, for love, power, life, trusting that it's there in the darkness, in the mystery, in the parts we don't understand. I don't really think we know how the universe began. People have been telling stories about it from the beginning. In Genesis, we're told there was darkness, and then God created life, and everything unfolded from there. But that means that God and darkness coexisted before light, before all the storytelling. Who created who? Did darkness create God? Before we were given senses to perceive the beauty and the love of the universe, darkness was there. And I like to think love and beauty were there. Can you imagine something alive and eternal? Something that survives all of the human-made destruction? Something that is here under the light and the fire that can, and maybe even will, rebirth creation again and again, no matter what. How might we be still enough to perceive it? Be still and know that is here. Be still and know that is. Be still and know that. Be still. Be. And at the end of that prayer, I always kind of wiggle a little bit. There's a lot of stillness, and now I have permission to be. So that's what I have for you. I would love to know what comes to you. Maybe you have some other examples of darkness that you enjoy, or stillness practices. Maybe you can illuminate us. That's not the right metaphor for today. Maybe you can explain to us where the universe came from. Dan Swenson, take it away.
Well, I had one sentence that I didn't read today. And the sentence is, but even the Big Bang cannot answer the fundamental question, why existence rather than nothing?
Can I ask you a follow-up question? Why existence and not nothing?
I am just comfortable with no understanding. I certainly learned that when I was getting my PhD, learning that there are things I just don't understand. And so it's just a mystery.
Well, we have to understand that lightness and darkness is totally dependent on human perception, because the human eye is evolved to react to wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation, which is what makes up light. And we evolved to see only those wavelengths between 4,000 and 7,000 angstroms. Look up angstroms if you worry about what the term means. And there's a lot more to light than what we see, ranging all the way from cosmic rays to gamma rays, up through visible light, microwaves, infrared rays, radio, television, etc. So light as we perceive it is simply what we see. And so it's a much deeper question. But anyway, I've written a poem for Chalice Group a while back called The Secret of the Universe. And so I can tell you what the secret of the universe is.
You're not going to tell us now?
Light is the secret of the universe.
Light is the secret of the universe.
All matter, all energy is embodied in light.
All matter, all energy is embodied in light. That's it?
I'd like to share a poem that I wrote a long time ago about this issue. It's called Looking for the Scissors in the Dark. I know where the scissors are, in a jar towards the back of the desk in the study, so I don't want the light. It's not that I'm too cheap to turn it on, but that my pleasure comes in walking in the dark, striding the length of a room, touching my way through a doorway, approaching slowly, resting my hip against the sharp edge of the desk, reaching for the holes in the handle, and if I miss, I reach again, trusting what I know is there.
Well, Dan, you mentioned the edge of mystery of what you know and don't know, but I think Larry pointed out this to me when he read the story of Genesis, that when did people realize that like that story talks about the light and the darkness, that preceded people's knowledge of that the sun created the heavenly bodies were created after the light and the dark. When did people suddenly realize, oh, the sun made the light? I mean, there's so many edges of our knowledge that we push them back, but then we still have these, there's still always mystery outside of that. While I was eating breakfast today, I opened Natural History magazine, and there were 2 articles about in the abyss. And one was about a new bacteriophage, a virus that lives inside bacteria that was discovered in the deepest trenches of the ocean. And there are all kinds of things that live down there. They aren't the organisms that float up to the light and get energy and then come down and feed everything below. They're things that get energy from the heat deep in the earth. But I guess maybe that's ultimately energy out of the sun too, and as for the old sun. But then I also read about this one old naturalist always writes an article, and he's been driving for decades on this same rutted road up to his cabin in Maine. And he noticed that in his tire treads, he always sees a rise and these ridges that rise in the dirt. And then after decades, he realized, oh, that's evidence of all the creatures, these star-nosed mole and shrews that live under there. They don't come up. They don't have any exit hole. They live down there, and they avoid their predators and also the extremes of temperature. And they live down there with all kinds of other creatures that they don't need the light at all. They live in a dark world. I love Diane's poem. My father had macular degeneration, and he still was aware of a lot of things that I guess he could see vaguely in the perimeter of his vision that had been lost in the central parts. And he always amazed me what he could still see, like the edge of a rug turned up, and would caution me about where I was walking. But I find myself, when I walk at night, all the lights are off, that I know how many stairs there are to the different levels in my house. And I know how my muscle memory knows how far to the doors and the edges of the room. So I find myself unconsciously practicing in case that's my fate too. So I really like the dark also. And I also recall the kids in my family, we always, everyone in the neighborhood ate dinner at 5 or 6. My family ate at 9. So we were always outside playing in the dark when everyone was in bed, and chasing fireflies and playing hide and seek, and hiding in the dark were two of my greatest childhood joys.
Thank you, Sylvia.